Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Basil Valentine Show with me, Basil Valentine, here on Unprecedented TV. This will be the first of many such broadcasts, I hope, starting with 2 a week, interviewing key figures in the world of influencers, politics, all the usual stuff. I'm afraid we can't get away from it. I'd much rather do a racing podcast in many ways and simply be talking about the chances of Stanhope Gardens in the eclipse on Saturday. I took the early 33-1, but will he even make the lineup if the ground is firm? But unfortunately, we don't have time for such niceties or frivolities. If only some of the key people in horse racing, particularly some of the more successful trainers, turned their hands to politics. We could do with John Gosden as Prime Minister. He would be a vast improvement on Keir Starmer and, for that matter, any of those other Labourites waiting in the wings to replace him now that his authority has been perhaps fatally damaged by last night's events in the House of Commons. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about the egregious atrocities occurring in Gaza and the obscene way in which commentary and condemnation and the media have framed events at Glastonbury at the weekend and in the days after. I've titled this program Schrödinger's Army because Diane Abbott, the Labour MP for Stoke Newington, has got into an awful lot of hot water today after tweeting something about the Jewish Defence Forces, referring to the IDF. It seems that nobody is allowed to use the word beginning with J for fear of being accused of anti-Semitism, which, of course, is what they've done. The pile on Diane Abbott has begun, is in full swing, calls for her to be expelled from the Labour Party. And yet it was only a couple of days ago that the IDF, of course, was being defended. The murderous, genocidal IDF was being defended by every talking head in Britain, it seems, when Bobby Villan said that he didn't like them and that he wished to see the end of the IDF. That famous chant, which has now become a record. We're not going to play it on this program. We're a fledgling station. We don't want to get banned, but that's where we're heading. We're heading to a weird, authoritarian, Zionist-run body politic in Britain. Palestine Action due to be banned by this time next week, unless they can successfully apply for a stay of execution and a judicial review, which they should in any decent country get. But of course, the High Court found only on Monday that the government is not complicit in the genocide for exporting weapons parts to the Middle East. A disgraceful decision. There's more we could go into about that, but I digress. Anyway, so 1 minute, of course, the IDF is an exclusively Jewish organization, and you are condemned for saying that it should come to an end because that ludicrously is mischaracterized as anti-Semitism. But now there is a pushback in another direction saying that, no, you can't say that because the IDF actually also has Druze fighters and Muslims and people of other ethnicities and religions in it. So basically, as Michael Rosen, the Jewish poet, said this morning on X, the IDF is Jewish when we say it's Jewish, and it's not Jewish when we say it's not Jewish. But either way, you're not allowed to say that it's Jewish. We really are in a very, very, very strange and disturbing world where people condemning genocide are rounded upon by government and the chattering classes and not the people perpetrating the genocide themselves. I thought we had some kind of basic ethical framework in this world, but it seems now that we don't, and it's only getting worse. International law is in ruins. It really doesn't exist in any meaningful sense. Judges are intimidated. I read that one of the chief prosecutors at the ICC was threatened by the United States. This is gangsterism. Threatening judges can only be described as gangsterism. But that's the world we're in, unfortunately. And the United States, under Israel's poodle, Donald Trump, now want to see Francesca Albanese, the special rapporteur on the occupied territories. They want to see her removed. Needless to say, they've revoked the touring visas of Bobby Villan and his crew, and are basically going hell for leather, and I do mean hell, to repress any kind of opposition to the genocide. Now, joining me to help us pick our way through the upside down world that we live in at the moment is the author and campaigner Luke Andreski, who's got some considerable purchase on X. I should say you've been making waves in social media. It's all we can do at the moment, really, Luke, isn't it? Is do our best to push back against the insane narratives coming out from the propagandists.
That's right. I think everybody's saying that if you have any form of platform whatsoever, you should be using it right now to speak out against the lies and the propaganda that we're seeing in favor of Israel's genocide.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's the double standards that get me. If we can play this first clip, studio producer, this is a record made by Israeli children. Well, they're certainly singing on it. They were obviously put up to it, calling for the death of basically everybody in Gaza, from what I can tell. This is a really bizarre, genocidal, so-called pop song. But we never see people like the Israeli ambassador or even British politicians confronted about this and asked to condemn it. But it is sadly all too indicative of mainstream Israeli society these days. So let's roll the clip there. Okay, that's enough. That's enough of that. Thank you very much indeed, studio. Love sanctified with blood. If you said that, Luke, then you'd be accused of blood libel. We will annihilate everybody. And that's a sentiment that's been echoed by Israeli politicians for the last 2 years. And the annihilation has only increased in the last few days. 200 people have been killed in the last 36 hours alone. A cafe on the beach, one of the few places in Gaza where you could sit and look out over the ocean and drink a cup of coffee, was bombed. The atrocities continue. They're very open about the fact that they're committing endless atrocities. But if you say anything against it, Luke, then you are in very, very serious trouble, so it seems.
Yeah, the double standards are extraordinary. But one point I'd first like to make about that video is what we've just witnessed was child abuse. You know, if I got a group of school children from my local school and I got them singing some genocidal songs or some pro-Nazi songs, I'd be hounded out of civil society. You know, it's child abuse. It's virtually paedophilia to get a group of innocent young children to sing about wiping out a whole people. It's shocking.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, the whole thing has got sort of cult-like, I would say, overtones, but they're not even overtones. They're, you know, the whole thing is sort of demonic in its whole presentation. And I'm afraid to say, I think the comparisons with Nazism are entirely valid. You know, many of the same. Go on.
I think one thing we forget in all of this, and this isn't to make any excuses for the actions of the IDF or of the Israeli state, but we forget that Israel has in fact done enormous moral harm to its own population. Through indoctrination and through propaganda, it's turned a good proportion of its population into psychopathic monsters, people who are willing to celebrate and encourage the destruction of an entire ethnic group, the Palestinians.
Well, celebrate is unfortunately the word celebrate and mock. If we can play this next clip, studio, this shows two soldiers openly humiliating, laughing at the horrific misfortune of a young Gazan boy whose mother has just been murdered. Let's not forget that the record numbers of child amputees in Gaza, record numbers of orphans, the whole place has been completely decimated. And just think for a moment if the boot was on the other foot, and that was Tel Aviv. I mean, there was tremendous wailing and gnashing of teeth when a few Iranian missiles landed in Tel Aviv, but the destruction is absolutely nothing compared to what's happened in Gaza. But as you say, there is this sort of really bizarro sadism going on as well, which is evidenced by this video. Yeah, there we go. How utterly charming. You know, this poor boy is devastated naturally by the death of his mother. He's only a toddler, and this appears to be a source of ridicule and mirth for the Israelis.
There's a great deal you can say about that clip alone. Did you notice they're wearing blackface, a kind of blackface? So they've smeared their faces as if they're suggesting that Palestinians are darker, dirtier, race that we can mock for their color as well as for their suffering. So there's a lot going on in there.
They blackened, absolutely, and they blackened their teeth as well. I noticed, you know.
Oh, disgusting! And but we see two sides of a coin there. We see the appalling moral depravity of what they're doing there, mocking a child and the death of their mother. We see the child abuse we referred to earlier, where they were abusing their own Israeli Jewish children in ways to encourage them to be psychopathic. And we're seeing them here abusing the children of the Palestinians in sort of blatantly sadistic ways. And we're also seeing that other inverse of all that, which is these two young men who are in the IDF have been morally bankrupted by their own society. A society that does that to its own young people is corrupt beyond anything you can imagine.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's now about half of all Israelis want to kill everyone in Gaza. And that includes many of the lawmakers as well. And yet, of course, things like the clip we just saw, you don't see that on British television. You don't see the Israeli ambassador, who I don't think should even be in the country. You don't see her hauled before a rigorous interview and asked to condemn that at all. Instead, unfortunately, all the oxygen in the room is taken up by this faux opprobrium, this entirely synthetic outrage at the words of a few pop performers at Glastonbury Festival, and not at what's actually happening on the ground in Gaza. Many people have pointed out recently that if you're more offended by what a pop star says on the stage at Glastonbury than you are in the genocide, then quite simply there's something seriously wrong with you, Luke.
That's I've read that several times. It's an absolutely valid point, and it is the crux of the matter. But there is another issue going on, and that is what we're seeing is anti-Semitism sweeping through our media, our politics, and even our legal establishment. So there are people saying that because you're saying, and I hope I can say this on your program, because the people have been chanting death to the IDF, which I read as saying death to an institution, not death to individuals. Just because you're saying that, people are coming back at you and saying, oh, you're saying death to all Jews. Well, that's the inverse of the anti-Semitism claims you described earlier against the Labour politician. And it's actually anti-Semitic to conflate the IDF, which what I see as a terrorist organisation, with all Jews. That's an absolutely anti-Semitic trope, and so effectively, all these people who are attacking Bob Villan or Kneecap are actually indulging in a form of anti-Semitism themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this point is not brought out anything like enough, particularly since there are ever-growing numbers of extremely vocal anti-Zionist Jews, both in this country, in the United States, where some of the most prominent figures, people like Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, his father, Medea Benjamin, the list goes on, Benjamin Rubenstein, who's a friend of mine, the list goes on and on of anti-Zionist Jews. And they are derided, of course, as self-hating Jews. Now, I want to just come to a terrific clip again by a Jewish lady who was put on the spot, supposedly by LBC in an interview earlier this week, yesterday. This is Ian Dale, I believe. And this backfired badly. And she put the facts out in a particularly crystal clear way, which we can hear now. This was on LBC earlier this week. Not often you get a chance to hear
in Glastonbury. The controversial performance itself, I won't mention the performers' names, well done, or the enthusiasm from the crowd.
Truthfully, what disturbs me the most is the media bandwidth given to this subject. Just this weekend, we've had some of the deadliest bombardments on Gaza by Israel, carpet bombing Gaza, schools where people are sheltering were bombed, a cafe where people were seeking shelter from the heat was bombed. On Friday, Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, had a report where Israeli soldiers said, actually, yes, we are shooting to kill civilians. In a weekend where we've had these two things on top of a 20-month-long war described as genocide by genocide experts, it is absolutely shameful and a disgrace that the media is focusing on this and not having the headlines running day after day on the atrocities that are being committed in Gaza.
I couldn't have put it myself, and I was pleased to see some passion there in her voice, because it is absolutely disgraceful, isn't it, Luke? Yeah.
Rachel Shabby, was it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, an excellent journalist, and really speaking out common sense, a common sense that cuts through this hypocrisy and this anti-Semitism that is running riot in our media at the moment. I thought that was an excellent clip. The media focus on hurty words about the IDF. I don't give a damn about that. It's an outrage to be focusing on an alleged slur of the IDF when the IDF are a terrorist organisation, in my view. They indulge in terror on all fronts. They car bomb Iran, they pager bomb Lebanon, they are slaughtering children by their thousands in Gaza, and we're supposed to be worried about people chanting death to the IDF. I don't give a damn about those chants. I give a damn about the horrific war crimes being undertaken by the IDF.
Yeah, I mean, it's been the case since the beginning of the onslaught that Western media has constantly sought to talk about anything else but the main event. Jonathan Cook put it very aptly in his latest article for Middle East Monitor. The aim has been to get the Western media to focus on, and therefore Western audiences to think about, not the main drama, the genocide itself, or the inherently violent nature of the Israeli state carrying it out, but instead invest in separate plot twists and turns, ones that don't make Western capitals look so obviously complicit and depraved. Even when the media does report on Gaza, it is rarely to address Israel's mass slaughter of Palestinians. Rather, it is to debate dozens of other matters thrown up, like the rubble and dust from an Israeli bombing run by the genocide. And now, of course, these atrocities have been compounded by the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has been roundly condemned by genuine humanitarian organizations, where hungry Gazans looking for a bag of flour are used as target practice by the IDF. And then when they do get some flour, it may well be laced with deadly opioids like oxycodone. I mean, if you were writing a film script about a supervillain, about the most evil army in the world, one of these classic moral tales that Hollywood likes to pump out, and you said that the baddies were doing that, people would say that this is too far-fetched.
They would. I've compared the situation in Gaza to the Hunger Games, and that makes the Hunger Games look like a rom-com in comparison to what's happening out there. It's so appalling. The things you've just described, the putting pharmaceuticals in food, shooting people as they struggle to get food from queuing up at these so-called aid sites. I call them ethnic cleansing facilities. It's beyond what you would expect from the most dystopian of movies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the British government is complicit in it. I've learned this morning from Declassified that in addition to running spy flights over Gaza and passing the intelligence on to the Israelis, British bases have also been used as refueling stations for Israeli aircraft engaged in the slaughter, engaged in the genocide. The Ministry of Defense recently put up a picture of the new chief of the armed forces. I don't know if you saw that. The guy looks like a village idiot, and that's probably because he is one. I don't know who's in charge of the British military these days, but they need to wake up to the fact that we're going to see them prosecuted for their role in these crimes. There has to be a reckoning, Luke, or we are living in a new age of barbarism.
Yes, I totally agree. What we're seeing is the utter moral shaming of the UK. So, and that's why every single UK citizen has to speak up. Every person who cares at all about morality, about decency, about treating others as you would have them treat you, needs to speak up against what our government is doing in supporting the genocide in Gaza. We're doing the spy planes, we're delivering weapons, we're selling weapons. As you say, we're refueling bombers. We're covering up politically for Israel. We are hosting their generals and their politicians and a literally genocidal Israeli ambassador. And then we get some sort of words about how terrible it all is in Gaza from our politicians, while doing absolutely nothing to stop doing the things they're doing to support the genocide.
No, absolutely. There's a huge disconnect between politicians in the West, particularly London, Brussels, Berlin, and Washington, I would say, and the vast majority of the populations that they purport to represent. Ursula von der Leyen is one of the chief offenders. She needs to go to jail. Friedrich Merz, disgracefully. I mean, this was really bizarro stuff. he said last week that Israel is doing Europe's dirty work. What, by massacring thousands of civilians? I mean, we know that the Germans...
Sounds quite fascistic, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So we've got one final clip here. This is from a recent demonstration in Melbourne, Australia, I believe. And it seems that the chant that Bobby Villan initiated at Glastonbury on Saturday afternoon has already caught on in other parts of the world. It remains to be seen if we hear it at the next anti-genocide rally. There's due to be a very big demonstration in London later this week in support of Palestine Action, who are about to be proscribed. So it'd be very interesting to see if the police go in and try and arrest everybody for shouting death to the you-know-who, because it's a total mischaracterization to say that's a hate crime. I wasn't aware of the fact that an army is a protected characteristic. Anyway, here we go. This is Melbourne.
Death to the IDF! Death to the IDF!
Yeah, now our sometime colleague, my friend Patrick Henningsen, is currently running a poll on X. If you see this any time before Thursday lunchtime, you can go and vote on it. Do you believe the IDF to be a terrorist organization? 96% of people have said yes. That's out of about 9,000 respondents so far. Of course, you could say, oh, well, that's people who follow Patrick Henningsen. But it seems that our leaders want to make belonging to a genocidal army a protected characteristic, like being gay or black or something. That's the only way that you could frame that chant as in any way hate speech, as they've attempted to do, Lou.
I think it's wonderful that we're seeing that chant going around the world. If I had been in that crowd, if I was in Glastonbury, I would have been singing that. I'm a moralist. I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't believe in anybody being killed. I believe every life is sacred. So why am I saying, yes, I'd shout, I'd sing death to the IDF? I'm saying that because I oppose the institution of the IDF, or more accurately, the Israel Defense Forces. I oppose the crimes they're committing. I would like to see that organization disbanded. And that's what I would mean as a pacifist and as a humanist in shouting out death to the IDF. To suggest that means I seek the death of Jews or of any single individual is to mischaracterize and to actually be anti-Semitic, because it's not about Jews at all. It's about criminals who should be disbanded and taken to court.
Well said, Luke. Viewers and listeners, thank you so much for joining me on the Basil Valentine Show today here on Unprecedented TV. I say thank you to my guest, Luke Andreski, to the team in the studio, and I will be back with another show very soon before the end of the week, I hope. Have a good time. Please feel free to share this on any platforms or other media you wish. We want to grow our numbers here at Unprecedented, and your help is much appreciated. See you all again very soon.